All right, good morning. I am recording. Today is Tuesday, the 21st of February, day 28, if I've counted right. And as it says here, well, first of all, let me tell you that I did give you two attachments today. The first was the completed chapter 9 shape up, because some of you had questions on how that was completed. So you've got that. We're going to make a copy of that and then do the ones for chapter 10. And I've also given you this article here. Thought you might find it interesting. I don't know. It's on a front end developer roadmap, and it's just on things that you might want to be looking at. That's all. And there's a boatload of links and stuff in it. I'm not going to go over it, at least not right now. So, as it says here, today we're first going to go over the chapter 10 shape up exercises example. I've got the chapter 9, which again, I'm going to copy right over to chapter 10 in a minute. Then I want to go over again the instructions for the chapters 10 to 15 pretest. Finally, I'm going to lecture on chapters 16 and 17 today. All right, tomorrow I will go over the pretest, and I will also lecture on chapter 18, and that will be it for the book. Now, I've got an email in to Mr. Gudmested, and I went and looked through his stuff from last semester that he has out on a drive that's only accessible to instructors. And it looks like, and again, I could be wrong, but it looks like after chapter 9 in this book, he didn't give any more tests. Now, if he didn't, I'm not going to. And if he did, I'll give the one that he gave. I might look at it and rewrite it a little bit, but I'll give that. I sent him an email yesterday. He has not yet returned, right, actually over Teams, and he has not returned the message. But either way, we will basically be done with the book, the HTML5 CSS3 book this week. We will next week begin the Bootstrap portion of the class, either Monday, if we do not have a test, or Tuesday if we do. All right. Again, because some people had gotten a hold of me and said they were having some problems with chapter 10, as I've done several times. I've extended the deadline now to tomorrow. Normally it was Tuesday, but that's when we had class on Monday, which we didn't have this week. So if you have not yet turned in your work for chapter 10, be it the written test, be it the labs, the homework, or all of them, you have until midnight tomorrow to do that. Your chapters 11 through 15 stuff will be due this Sunday, the 26th. And again, even though I am going to lecture on 16, 17, and 18, you will have nothing that you have to turn in from there. All right. What I'm also going to do tomorrow, I don't know if we'll do it before or after the lecture on chapter 18, which is the beginning of JavaScript, is I've got my own copy of a BMI program in JavaScript, and we're going to write that together as a class so you can see what that's all about. All right. But within, I'd say, somewhere around the beginning of March, it'll be in there someplace. All right. We'll be finishing up with Bootstrap and going into JavaScript. So we'll be using the other book from then on. Okay. All right. So with that said, let's just get started. So this is the stuff for chapter 10. As it says in this exercise, we'll create the stress relief page, which is right here, and we'll create that using a grid layout. So we've already gone through and done the strength training. Actually, we did the home kind of with just using responsive web design. We did the strength training and we used Flexbox for that. And now we're going into grid. All right. So again, I just want to follow the instructions that they have in here. All right. So to start with, I'm going to grab, this is the same thing I sent you. So I'm going to I'm going to click on this and make a chapter 10. All right. And one of the first things, in fact, let's open it the right way. So let's open it in code. All right. And one of the first things we're told to do is to go in and under stress this index.html. We're basically told, since this is just one of those under construction pages to get rid of it. So all that code is gone. And like I said, I'm just going to, as best I can, try to follow the instructions that they gave in there. So let's see. So open up the index, yes. Delete the main content, yes. Then copy the meta element for the viewport, the link, etc. All the stuff from the index page for exercise 8. In addition, copy the code for the header, the footer, the nav bar, the sidebar, and add a section element before the sidebar. So we're about right here. So let me go back into here and let me find our regular index page, which is right here. All right. So I'm going to grab all that and I'm going to go all the way through about right here. And if I have to, I'll make some changes, but we'll do that. So I'm going to copy that. And this is our stress index.xml. And let me just end the section here. And then we'll end the main. Oops. And we'll end the body. And we'll end the HTML. There you go. Now we have copied everything over, as far as I can tell. All right. So again, just following the steps here.
Professor?
I deleted the main element. I copied in the meta. I copied in the link elements. I copied in the stuff for the select nav. I think I copied in the code for the header, the footer, the menus, and the sidebar. And as it says, well, let's see, menus and sidebar for this page. So let's look. All right, I don't know if there was a sidebar on here or not. Probably was. That's this. So let me grab that. I think they said to put that here, but I'll double check.
Professor?
Add a section element before the sidebar. So, okay, we'll put that before the sidebar. All right. So hopefully you've had a chance to do that. Do a file save all on here. And I'm going to close that one. This is again the one for stress. So again, I'm going to do a file save and I'm going to see if I can bring it up with live server. And just to see what it looks like. Okay, not very much. And you know why. It's because we are supposed to make a stress.css file in our styles. And we doesn't look like we have one in there right now. So I'm sure that'll be in the next step and we'll do that in a second. All right, create a new style sheet and copy over everything from the main RWD to that style sheet. Then modify the link so that it points to the correct style sheet. So let's do that next. Okay, so there's that. And we will change this from the, let's see, what do we have in here? From the main RWD, we will change that to stress.css. Hopefully I didn't miss up or miss anything, but we'll find out in a minute. Oh, that doesn't look good, does it? Let's see. Says styles. There's stress.
Professor, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Uh, we did. So you did do this last week, I think?
The chapter 10 one?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know we did that. Okay,
But
go
I will
ahead.
say, whenever I watched the lecture, you had this issue. You have to do the folder thing with the dot dot slash on the stress
Right.
and all the CSS.
You are correct. That you're right. That's right here. because we are inside of a subfolder. You are right. Thank you. And I think it's one level, but we'll find that out too. So this, of course, we don't need that. So thank you for reminding me of that.
No problem.
All right. So it's looking a little bit better now. For some reason, it doesn't have the logo. I'm not worried about that. We can get that up. That's no biggie. All right. But everything else, it looks like was copied in. All right. So delete the submenus from the navigation menu to make it easier to work with, then delete any CSS that applies to the submenus. Well, let's go in first and look and see if we have those submenus. And that looks like it is right here. And it is right here. All right. I'm not going to worry right now about removing that CSS. If you get a chance, please remove it. It's not good to have bloat code in there. But then again, if you ever were going to go back and put those back in, you'd want that code to stay there. So otherwise, you can remove it, you can comment it out, or you can just leave it there. All right. It's not going to bother me anyway. Typically what I do when I'm grading this is I run it, I take a look at it, I see if indeed the page that was supposed to be responsive is responsive, and then I go in and take a quick look at the CSS, and once in a while I'll take a quick look at the HTML as well. All right. All right. Modify the menu so that it indicates that the stress relief page is the current page, and modify the links in the menu as necessary. You already know this, we've done this before. So we want to take that class equal current out of here, and we want to put it into our stress page. All right. And there it is. All right, so that looks good. All right, so what we have to do is the stuff on there and on here. So add the content in the stress relief.txt to the section, then format the content so that it looks as shown. Okay, let's do that first. I don't know if I've got that here or not, but I will check. If I don't, I'll find it, so I'm not going to worry about it. So yeah, I don't have it on here, but I'll grab it from the authors. I think it was the stress relief.txt. Double check. Yep. All right, then put that into the section. So that was right there. All right. Probably not an H1. It's probably like an H2 or an H3, but we'll make it a 3. All right. Okay, hopefully that's at least starting to look the way that it's supposed to look. Okay, all righty. Let's go take a look at here. All right, that doesn't look too bad right now. I guess this should have been an H1, but that's fine. We'll leave it like it is. So we added the format the body of the page so that it uses a grid. The grid should include grid areas for the header. And you can see the header takes up every column. The navigation menu, all right, which is in here. The sidebar, the section, and the footer. Okay. All right. There's the section, there's the sidebar, and there's the footer. So we'll do that in just a second. Use any technique you want to position elements on the grid. Okay. Let's go into the stress.css that's right here and take a look at what's here. All right. Well, the first thing we're going to want to do, of course, is to come in here and in the body itself, we'll want to do a display grid. All right. Then we have to figure out how we want this thing to be filled out. All right. So I'm going to use a grid template. And I'm going to do a repeat on here. This is taken from, there was one like this in the book. All right, that's where I stole that from. So I'll leave that there. The H1, H2, H3, and paragraphs are fine. The anchor tag should be fine. The hover and the focus should be fine. And let's go down to the styles for the header, because we'll have to do some work on those. All right, so we've got a border bottom. All right. Basically, we've only got like a two or three column format here. All right. So we want for rows, and for columns. I'm not sure, but my hope really is that Evan didn't test on this. This isn't fun stuff to do. And believe it or not, it's not fun stuff to test on either. All right. And I'm going to show you a little in just a bit, like I said, when we talk about the pretest, what I've done, and I already know where I've got two errors in mind, and I know where one of the errors is already, and I got to just fix it. I just didn't do it yet this morning. But it's like I said, it's sort of a pain in the butt to do. All right, the header image should be fine. The header H2, I believe, was fine as it was. I believe the H3 was fine as it was. Yeah. The nav menu, well, here's again. So it's the main in there. So it's the header, it's the navigation menu. All right. I think it was the aside, and it's the footer that we're going to have to make changes to. So in this nav menu here, right? Let's see. The UL is another thing because we want this to be responsive. All right. So inside of here, we don't really even need a position relative in here anymore. All right. The list style none is fine, but let's get rid of any margin we might have, any padding we might have. It's display grid. And I think you already know this. I should have said it already if I didn't. Typically, the order in which you put these things isn't going to matter. The LI, I believe. I don't even think I had this thing in here anymore, this LI, but I'm going to leave it there for right now. Let's see, the UL would be one thing we could remove. Anything UL, because that's that inner stuff that we said we were supposed to get rid of. So let me comment that out and comment this out. All right, again, I don't like to remove things just in case, because I sometimes find that later I do need them. All right, so we've got the nav menu, UL. I'll change this to an LIA and do this for the anchor link. Oops. Try that again. All right, and in my curly. Oops, there we go. All right, and here. All right. We also want the current, and we got to work the stuff in here. So let me grab this. And I think that was just supposed to be black. And the hover and the focus. Those were supposed to be a light steel blue. Right. And I don't think I need any of this other stuff that's in here, but there's a lot of it. You can tell I already replicated. So I'm going to, for now at least, I'm going to grab everything else that was in this nav section and I'm going to comment it out. All right. And I'm going to jump right down then to the section. And this will be different because remember, this was set up originally as the section. We copied some of this stuff in. So let's see in here. This was copied in from the main rwd.css file. So some of it'll be the same and some of it'll be quite different. Right. That looks good. I think this is, I don't even know if we had an H2 in here, but I'll leave that there anyway. That looks good. Paragraph. That looks fine. All right, we do have an unordered list in here, if you remember. We added that right at the bottom. Okay. And then we've got the aside. Yeah, well, and the footer. Now the aside's going to have to change. And again, the footer is going to have to change. But for the aside itself, again, this was set up back, I believe, from chapter 8. So we were doing it responsively. In other words, we were doing it using floating and the like. Well, now we're not. Okay, I'll leave that there. That H2 looks fine. The UL, that looks fine. The link, the visited, etc., that all looks fine. So the only thing that's left here is the footer. All right, so let's do that. And again, most of the things that we're going to change are in here. Oh, I guess we have the media queries as well. So footer paragraph looks fine. The mobile menu looks fine. So all that is left then is to make some changes to the media queries. All right, into those. That looks okay. This, again, all the stuff that we're going to change. So this is the nav menu. All right, in fact, for the 767, let's see, the nav menu display none, that's fine. But we have to tell it we're using a grid template. And also for our header, all right, the nav menu, as I mentioned, is okay. All right. Here, changing the background and decreasing the padding, that's all okay. The mobile menu, we're gonna have to make some changes in here. All right. In the mobile menu itself, display block is right, but we're gonna, again, do a grid row and a grid column. Right. The UL is fine. The background color here is fine. The hover and the focus is fine. The H2 is fine. The section we're going to have to change right now, so let's do that. And the aside we're going to have to change, and we'll have to add some footer stuff. So let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And let's also just add a footer, which for now will be blank. All right. Okay, again, so for smaller sizes, this will be again with a little bit of, whoops, with a little bit of padding. All right, that is that for the aside. And then finally for the footer, and I believe everything at the bottom here was fine the way it was. Yeah. All right, that should be it. Go back to here and to here. Well, that doesn't look very good. So I'm missing something, but that looks good. So it looks good till about right here. And then there's something, it's not being pushed over right now. All right. And I'll tell you what I'll do is I will take a look at that during the break so you don't have to watch me hunt and peck around for it. And I'll try to bring the logo back in and I'll give you the final look see, so to speak, on that at that time. Just do the best on this you can. All right. So I show you real quick too on here now. Let's see. What you were asked to do for the pretest was to grab that Great Wall site and change it into a 3-page site. Page 1 of the site was to be a home page, and as it said, it should look like a typical home page for a restaurant. And I even gave you a thing in there that had some examples if you wanted to. Second was an about page, which had a combination of images and text. All right. And the third page should have had an order form on it with all of this stuff that you see right here. And it should have also had a table in it, all right, that had the different kinds of entrees. Make each page responsive. Ideally, what I was going to do, I didn't write it like this, but what I was going to do was I was going to ask that you take one page and make it responsive using Flexbox, take one page and make it responsive using Grid, and take one page and make it responsive using the concepts for responsive web design that was discussed in chapter 8, and to make sure it looked good um, on all media. So here's mine. And did I take some liberties? I did, and I always do. So here was the home page. I can already tell you this is wrong right here because I should remove it. All right. And that's all I've got in here. Okay. And when you move it down, actually looks better smaller than it did when it was big because it is somewhat centered here. So I'll have to fix that. The about page, what I did was I literally just came in here and grabbed a picture of the Great Wall. I think I looked this up and I believe the one that I grabbed was off of Wikipedia, but I don't remember for sure. This actually, when I looked it up, that was what I found online, and their hours are their actual hours. And you'll see that this one also, and I got to move this down. All right. But that's how I did that one. And then the contact page looks like this. All right. Where here's the form. Guess I could have made it a little wider. And here's the table. I actually went out and found pictures of this stuff. This one, I believe I used Flexbox on, just so that when it hits that point, I just use 767. All right. So what I will do is tomorrow, when I get to that point, all right, tomorrow I will show you, hopefully I'll get to have a chance to get that done. I'm working on a program that I'm having some problems with for the other class. So hopefully we'll get that finished though. All right. So that's what I've got. And that's pretty much what I was asking you to do as well. Like I said, I got to fix that. All right. Let me jump right in. First of all, let me close a bunch of this stuff that's open. All right. And what's left in the book, as you can see now, is chapter 16, fairly short chapter, chapter 17, a very short chapter, and chapter 18, which is a longer chapter. So I'm going to right now do chapter 16 and do chapter 17. All right. When it gets to be about 8:55, so in about 10 or 11 minutes, we should have time to do chapter 16, take a break. During the break, I'll try to figure out what the problem was on that thing. And if I can, I'll let you know and try to bring in the image as well. All right. And then that'll be it. We'll go over chapter 17 after the break then, and that'll be it for the day. The rest of the period will be a lab. And one of the reasons you're getting a little more extensive lab this week is you are being asked to do the labs, homework, and written tests for 5 different chapters, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So with that said, let me jump here, if it'll let me, or maybe not. So oh, reads this like it does. And again, I am going over these 3 chapters, especially 16 and 17, just for completeness for the book. You will not have any homework. You will not have any labs. You will not have any written tests on chapters 16, 17, or 18. All right. So as you can see, it's entitled Users, Usability, and Web Design. And throughout the entire chapter, they give you a lot of guidelines in here. All right. For the way that they think that you want things or you should have things looking. All right. And the first thing they talk about in here, as you can see, is usability. And one of the things they stress in here is what most users want when they go out to a website. They want to be able to go in, do whatever it is they want to do, and get out and do it very quickly. All right. They want the site set up so things are set up in there as simplistically as possible. You may or may not have heard of this before, and many people break what I'm about to tell you. But there is something that's referred to as the 3-click rule, which means that anytime you get onto a website, you should be able to get to whatever you want using no more than 3 mouse clicks. Well, I mean, imagine something like Amazon where you went in there and let's say you wanted some kind of an appliance. I don't know what it is. Maybe you could go to that thing and find it, but then you'd have to go somewhere else and somewhere else. So with things like that, it's often going to be more than 3 clicks. But in an ideal world, that's what you want. So they mention in here they want things to be orderly. They don't like to scroll. If you ever need scroll up and down. So scroll vertically, never scroll horizontally. All right. Especially, if it's going to be a device that's going to be used on a phone, you never want to force the user to scroll horizontally from left to right. All right. So it says that with usability, it determines how easy it is to use a website. And it's one of the key factors. And they give you a lot in here. There's a lot of stats and stuff they give. And I don't know where they got all this stuff from. All right. But for example, let's assume, and I've used this example before, not the one they're showing here, but let's say that I wanted to buy a basketball. All right. I might go out to like Dick's, and if it's too hard, if I can't find it in a couple clicks, if I'm the average user, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of there and I'm going to go to some other site. Well, what does that mean? That means if it wasn't usable enough, that Dick's just lost some business. All right. And that's what, of course, companies want to avoid. All right. I don't want to sit and read this stuff to you. I've already mentioned a lot of it. All right. But again, you want to make this stuff as easy as possible for people to get what they want. They do talk about these guidelines here. Some people I've heard with at least one of these disagree with, but the top half of the web page is what's typically referred to as being above the fold. And if you've never heard that saying before, it's back in the days when there were a lot of written newspapers and you'd fold the newspaper in half, all right? And you'd basically stick one that was folded in half in a box where people could buy them. So you'd put the most important picture and or stories on the top half to try to get people's attention, to make them want to see the rest. And that's what they're talking about in here as well. You should group related things together. All right. And they're going to give you some more stuff with usability then on the next page. Now, one of the big things with usability is, remember, you want to make your site usable for everyone. You want to make it as easy for people to use as possible. One of the things I've stressed to you this semester, and we've done it at least once or twice, but for example, if you've got up here, as they show, if you have go, you should be able to be on any page of the website, and basically your header section up on top should look the same, if not totally identical, very similar. And if you click that image, you should always go back to the home page. And again, you might say, well, duh. Yeah, but it's amazing how many people don't think of stuff like that. They talk about things like taglines. It identifies what's unique about the website. Well, again, notice, welcome to the Vermont County Store. Log in or create an account. I don't see anything up here that's going to make it unique. All right. You could say the free shipping. I don't know. All right. But they talk in here and they get into, if they haven't talked about it already, they'll talk about chunking, chunking, where the idea is that what you will do is you will take, if you have to separate your web page into different sections, at a minimum, you want to take things that belong together and put them together. All right. Things like this, that the images should be close to the associated text. Some of the stuff that's just in there is just common sense. All right. But people break these conventions that they talk about all the time. As it says on the bottom there, if your website implements the current website conventions, your users will be able to use the same techniques on your site that they use on other sites. All right. Some design guidelines. Again, this is what you're shooting for today, and that is mobile first design. And believe it or not, if you design for mobile first, it's much easier for you to scale up than it is for you to scale down in size, because there's a lot more intricacies that you have to worry about for mobile design that you don't have to worry about for desktop, etc., desktop laptop type of design. All right. And as it says in here, both of them make sense. All right. But the idea is you want to make sure that your site looks good on both. All right. And, one of the things when we were teaching Android here, one of the things that would sometimes drive students nuts is we would make a lot of applications that would look like this. And they would look real nice on a phone as long as it was portrait. And once you turned it, to make it landscape, it looked crummy. All right. And are there ways around that? Of course there are. One is you build two different layouts, one for a portrait type and one for a landscape type. The other thing you can do with a phone is you can literally turn off portrait or turn off landscape, so that if the user tries to tilt something in a certain way, it doesn't work. And a good example of that is a lot of times when you see, games that are on a phone, they will work in landscape mode, but they won't work in portrait mode because there's just not enough screen room. Use the home page to sell the site. Well, that's what's bringing people in. Again, nothing new there. All right. And they give you a bunch of guidelines. I'll just leave them up there for a second. Again, you see number 4, group items together. All right. Only use icons for navigations if the user will will be able to easily, readily, as they say, recognize these sites. All right. Design the homepage so that it's different. Well, again, this is what's bringing people in to the site. And in many ways, this is what's bringing them in and is either going to keep them there or it's going to cause them to leave. All right. Couple things about this. If you're used to holding, for example, a piece of printer paper, all right, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, typically most people set that up so that it can take about 80 words, when you're going across on a page. But typically on a website, you want to plan for no more than 65. And I shouldn't say words, I should say 65 letters as they go across the screen. All right. And one thing you can see what they've done here, and you know how to do this kind of stuff now by using padding, by using margin, etc., that you want to be able to take and really take stuff and space it out. Now, I would argue, looking at the example that they have there, there's too much stuff up here. All right. If I was Joe or Jane end user and I was coming in to use that, to me, that would be too much. All right. And I would think there would probably be a way they could cut that down in some way or another. All right. Using submenus or something else. As it says, to a large extent, the homepage of your website is what is used to determine whether or not you get the results you want. All right. Always let users know where they are. All right. You may or may not have heard of this before. But again, a lot of times what you'll see up at the top, all right, is you might see, for lack of better words, kind of, like what's called a breadcrumb to basically show them where they are on the site. Highlight active links. Here, there's the breadcrumb, as it says in this format. So you'd be under homepage dogs traveling. Not only that, also on a breadcrumb, you can typically click one of the previous links to get back to that page. As it says here, as the site gets more complex, users are likely to lose track of where they are. All right, but even simple sites should let users know where they are. You never want to insult anyone's intelligence, but you always want to make it as simple for them as possible. All right. All right. Make the best use of web pages, spacing, and they kind of compare this one here with this one. All right. I mean, is that a waste? You can make your own determination over which is better, this or this. All right, as an example. Now keep the header small, prioritize, etc. As we've already mentioned, the most valuable space is what's above the fold. All right, that's where you're going to sell or not sell. Chunking, I've already mentioned. They use their own example here where they're chunking things. You notice this goes together, this goes together, this goes together, etc. And that is pretty much a page from the Muroc site. That is the way that they set their stuff up in there. You go out to Muroc.com. All right. What they mention here is, as far as graphic design goes, they say if you're not a graphic designer, you might want to hire one. And they talk about some of the more common principles here, such as, well, notice alignment means align related items to give a sense of order to a page. Symmetry, things should have a natural look and feel to them. Proximity is mentioned in here, as it says, related items should be close to one another. All right. Repetition. All right. It provides some continuity to the page. And again, not everybody agrees with this. I already mentioned this about don't have text lines longer than 65 characters. All right. And a lot of times, you might look at a certain page and say, now there's too much in here. This is too hard to see. I wouldn't like this site, etc. But again, always be cognizant of the fact that you are creating this for somebody else. All right. I've done this many times in my life where I've created a site or created something for somebody, and I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. They're never going to want this. I'll tell you this real quick. You probably never heard this story from me. God's honest truth. I was I had been working as a programmer for about 5 years, and then I was offered a chance to get into education. I did, and I was in there for 3.5 years. I went back into programming. And when I went back into programming, was a professional programmer, one of the first things that they asked me to do was to create this order entry system for the company I was working for. And the guy who was in charge said, and I want it to be this color. I think it's such a cool color. And it was the weirdest shade of purple you've ever seen. And I said, your people aren't going to want that. The background is going to look bad no matter what color I put in there for the text. It's not going to be what they, and he goes, that's what I want. And I said, fine. So I said, I'll give you that. I said, what else do you want? And God's honest truth, I'm not making this up. He said, when you remove a record from the site, you want you to ask the user first, are you sure you want to do that? And then if they say yes, I want you to play the funeral march. Dum, dum, da, dum. And it was like, I said, you're kidding. He said, no. I mean, this guy was wound a little bit differently. The bottom line is, I gave him exactly what they wanted. 2 days later, he called me. He didn't want the same background color and he wanted the damn music to be gone. It wasn't him that wanted that. It was the people using the product that wanted that. All right. Okay. So, if you need more on that, you know, designs, we've talked about all this stuff before. When you write for the web, they mention here, you don't read for the web the way you read for a book. All right. This would be it more in a book format, and here it is more in web format. You want things broken up. All right. You want to make it as easy for somebody to read something as possible. And unlike a book where you might take quite a bit of time to go over each page, most people skim all the text that's on any web page. And that's it. So it is 9 o'clock. I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break. Let's go to line 10. During that time, I'm going to see if I can figure out that error. And if I can, great. And if I can't, I'll figure it out for tomorrow. And then we'll go over chapter 17. All right. So I'll see you at 9:10. Well, I have fixed this as far as the errors that I found that were in mine, and it looks okay until it gets to right there. All right, which is probably the 767 breakpoint. And there's something in there. This is not supposed to be there. It should be pushing it off over here. And it's not, but again, I will look at it. But as it gets smaller, it looks okay. And the individual pages work, the ones that have been constructed. All right. So I'm going to have to look and see if I can figure out what the problem with that is, because of course it shouldn't look like that. All right. Let's jump back into the book then and finish up this last chapter that we're going to go over for today, which is chapter 17. Now, just so you know, there are plenty of ways to deploy a website. All right. One way to deploy a website, and I don't know if I've talked about this with you yet or not, probably not. All right. And that is that literally you can deploy a website right to Google. All right. Not to Google, right to GitHub. And what I mean is special thing that you can use with GitHub that's called GitHub Pages. Now, last semester, I did a lecture on this, and we'll do it again. But what I'll do is I'll find that lecture from last semester and I'll put it out there on the system. So if you have any desire to learn how to do it, it's really and truly not difficult. All right. There's a little bit of stuff that you have to do, but I think I did a halfway decent job of explaining what it was. Now, let's say you don't want to do that. Okay. Well, then you can go out, you can find yourself a provider. There are places that will host sites for either free or a very, very minimal cost. There's other ones that will charge quite a bit. So as it says, once you've developed and tested, you're just a few steps away from making it available to the world. To do that, you need to upload the files, all right, to a web server. Now, I want to show you, and I have to talk to Evan about this, but in the past, what we have done, we meaning Rankin Technical College, is we actually had our own server that was basically designed just for the AWD program. Now, when the AWD program began, rather than being called AWD, which is Application and Website Development, it was called IWT, which was Internet Web Technology. The reason I'm telling you that is the name of the server was just iwt.rankin.edu. All right. And as an example here, let's see if I can grab one of these. I don't know if they're even still out there or not. It's going to sit and spin and think about it a while. But they were having a problem with this server. I don't know why, but for some reason it wasn't very secure. And people were constantly hacking it, or there were problems with it, etc. So they changed it around and they decided that instead, let's see, either. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But I'll have to ask Evan if that website is still available. I know that he said that they were probably going to retire it. It was old. It didn't have a lot of memory, etc., and they didn't want to put more money into it. So I'm going to double check with him and see if the way that he did it was by using Google Pages or if he used something else. Okay. All right. The reason for telling you that, though, was when we used this IWT, I had students go in and they downloaded a package that was called FileZilla, which is a free package, and it's kind of a neat package. And what I mean is, over here, over here is basically your machine. Over here is the web page. All right, and I should say not the web page. This is the server. So if I could connect here to iwt.rankin.edu, it would show me over here. I'd connect as me. If it's not letting us in with a password, and then the port is always just the default for 21. You'd click connect. Then over here, I'd see the stuff on my local machine. And here I would see all the stuff I had out on the server. All right, under my account. So if I wanted, for example, to take this data thing right here and move it over to there, all I'd have to do would be to right mouse click on it and choose upload. Now it's not going to let me now because I'm not logged in. You have to do it being logged in as you. All right. And again, like I said, I promise I will, the next time I talk to Evan, I will ask him, are you still using iwt.rankin.edu? I know when I talked to him about this last semester, he said he said the use of that at best was minimal. All right. And he was discouraging anybody from using it because of all the problems they'd had with it. All right. But they will show you that in here, and then how to start your own website. Okay. Again, not a long chapter. It won't take us very long to do this. All right. This is one time note that rather than using HTTP, the hypertext transfer protocol, or HTTPS, the hypertext protocol secure, you use FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol. When you use FTP, it can be used in two different ways. You can use FTP and you can upload your stuff from your machine, all right, to a server. Now, almost always to do that, you need some kind of an account on the server machine. All right. On the other hand, you can also download where you grab something from a server and copy it to your machine. Now, for that, quite often, you don't need any kind of special login or anything else. You just need to basically log into the program, but you don't typically need an account to do that. All right. So the first thing they're going to do in here is they're going to show you, as it says, how FileZilla worked. And I did not do a great job of showing it to you. All right. Mainly because I can't connect right now. But again, what you see when you do this is very similar to what I showed you. So again, this would be your, basically this would be your desktop probably. And this would be your account that's out on the server. And as you can see right here, if I wanted to take this town hall and move it over to here, I would right mouse click on the file name and choose upload. The other thing you can also do if you don't want to do that is just click on the folder and drag it over to the other side, and it works the same way. All right. You can also go from the other direction. So you can take stuff from here and copy it over to here. All right. And that's what they're talking about in here. And they're talking about uploading when you're going from a local site to, like in this case, the iwt.rankin.edu, or downloading when you're going the other way. All right. How to test a web page that's been uploaded. Well, that's what I was trying to do with you guys, and it didn't work, but it was always, like in here, let's see. Yeah, it's not really showing anything now, but it would always. And this was working up till, geez, a month or two ago, because James is one of my students who graduated in December, and he's one of the few who put his stuff out on iwt.rankin. And I know that that was working, and as you can see, it's not working now. But to test it, really all you had to do, you didn't have to be in FileZilla or anything. Once you've moved that stuff to FileZilla, you just, like I just tried to show you there, you just go into your address bar and you put in the address as to which it was saved, and boom, anybody with an internet connection then could see your website. All right. And that's what they're talking about in here. Now, one of the things they'll mention in here, someplace in here, is when you're doing this, they say use Chrome to go to your homepage, etc. But you want to test it on other browsers as well. All right. There's not really typically a really humongous discrepancy today between looking at a site in one browser versus another, not nearly the way it used to be with earlier versions of the browsers. All right, IE always seemed to look different than everybody else. Their default margins, their default padding was different, etc. All right, which is one of the things that led to setting up reset files and removing all the margin and removing all the padding. As it says, before you upload files, you should test them on your own computer or local server. Not only that, if at all possible, it's not even a bad idea to if you've got everything in a folder, to zip that folder, send it to somebody else and let them check it out on their own local machine. And when you do that, it's kind of important. Don't just, send them out to your friends, your buddies or whatever. All right. Tell you real quick, because I'll always remember this, that when I decided I wanted to make a career change, this was many, many years ago, more than 20 years ago. Well, my mother was working at the time for an ad agency, and she has the remarkable ability that she can go through a resume, just take her finger and scan up and down the page and find any errors, either in spelling or errors in the English language. She worked for an advertising firm, and that was one of her main jobs. Was they would literally get hundreds of resumes a week. She would do is she would scan through them, and if she found any errors, she would throw them out. Well, when I decided to upgrade my resume, I had her look at it, and I could tell, oh, Jeff, it's really good. Oh, I wouldn't change a thing. She didn't really look at it. She was looking at it not as somebody who was going to hire me, but she was looking at it as somebody who was her son. All right. So when I decided I wanted to do that, the place I worked at, the person knew that I was thinking of leaving, and she agreed to take a look at my website, not as a friend, but as somebody with a really, really keen eye. And she found out a few things on there that didn't read very well. And I was very appreciative that she did that. Okay. Now with hosting services, there's a boatload of them out there. All right. They mentioned Bluehost on here. Bluehost is one that I have used in the past. All right. It's one that I have used for other people in the past. One nice thing about a thing like Bluehost, and most of them are very similar in this, is you can go in here, and when you do this, it's very drag and dropish as far as getting things set up. The stuff that you have to do as far as like pointing the domain towards their servers, etc., things like that, almost always either they've got some kind of a wizard that will do it for you, or the company will do it for you themselves. All right. So again, you can read this stuff. There's a lot of things people will tell you about domain names, and some people agree with these things, some people don't agree with them. I've read, don't ever, one thing you should never try to do, even if for some reason you can, and I don't even know if you can, is never use blank spaces in a name. Always keep everything lowercase. All right. Try to really limit hyphens as much as you possibly can. I mean, I give Rankin credit that rankin.edu is about as small as it could get, I think. As it says, the domain name should be a user-friendly name. And what a lot of people do is if they buy the .com for their website, they'll also check to see if the .net and the .org are available, and they'll buy both of them. And then what they will do is if somebody comes out, for example, were to come out to, whatever, thewidgetcompany.com, but if they were to go out to thewidgetcompany.net or thewidgetcompany.org, they would just be redirected to the .com site. All right. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this, and I'm just telling you a few things from personal experience. I mean, one way that you can see if a name is available is you could just go in, and for instance, if I wanted to see if my name was available, so I'm going into jeffscott.com and I'm hitting enter. Notice what it says. This website is under development. All right. I don't think it's from me, but you can see this. So in other words, where it says this is under development, that means it's not available right now. All right. But what's really interesting about this, so let's pretend for a second that my name or I wanted my full name, which is jeffreypaulscott.com. All right. When it says this site can't be reached, and I know I check in here that it's spelled correctly, well, then one thing I know now is that domain name is available. But one thing you have to be leery of is there are people that they're typically referred to as cyber squatters. They go out and they can tell, if somebody is going out all the time and checking for certain names, domain names, they'll go out and buy them. All right. Then if you want them, somebody else already has it, but they'll sell it to you trying to make a profit. All right. And that happens a lot more than you think. Now, also, as an example, because I found this funny, because maybe I have a strange sense of humor, but I think it was in 2016 that Jeb Bush was running for president at the time. He let his domain name, jebbush.com, somehow they let the domain name lapse. All right. And guess who bought it? Donald Trump. So when you went out to jebbush.com for a while, it basically redirected you to Donald Trump's homepage. All right. Stuff like that happens all the time, a lot more than you probably would think. Okay. How to get your website. Again, this stuff is cool. First of all, the algorithms that are used by Google, by Bing, by Yahoo, etc., to see what you're doing here. What you're trying to do is SEO, search engine optimization. So what you're trying to do is if I come out and I want to create my own sporting goods store and I want to compete with Dick's and I want to call it Jeff's, well, I want to make sure if somebody goes out to Google and types in sporting goods, that my sporting goods appear above Dick's. All right. So what do I have to do that? Well, when you go and you submit stuff to the actual search engine itself, there's forms you have to fill out, etc. And they will look at a lot of different things. One of the things they will look at, not as much now as they used to in the past, but they still do, are things like your meta tags. Because in your meta tags, we haven't done real much with meta tags, but there's stuff in there. You can put content equals, description equals, and it'll look and see if what you say your site is about is indeed what your site is about. All right. Now there might be different pages or different parts of your website that are private, maybe an administrative area or something else. So as that robot, they literally have a program that's called, basically it spiders or it crawls or it goes through your site looking for things. And when you do this, all right, you can specify certain folders or certain pages that they should not look through. They're private in nature. All right. And they'll talk about in here how you can do that as well. Again, they mentioned that every search engine has its own algorithm. They do not share those algorithms either. Not only that, and I remember this with a friend of mine that I helped set up a site for him. And it said on there that in 2 weeks, it should be up and running. Well, it took almost 6. All right. And I mean, like I said, 3 times, and he was literally, he had retired and he started his own dog walking service and he wanted to get out there. So was, he was there and I must have, I don't know how many times to Google and to Bing, I sent out emails, when is this going to be up? And most of the time I didn't even get any response. All right. So if you need more than I just gave you about spidering, etc., you can see it here. All right. Now, there's an old saying basically that says that a website never is totally complete. All right. Because you're constantly going through after you set it up. You're in a 100% all the time maintenance of it, where you're going in and they mentioned here to add improvements. You want to make sure all the time that your links work, etc. So those are, one thing you should do is you know, before when you put a site out there, before it goes live, check every link, make sure every link works. And you should do that on a regular basis if you're linking out to other sites or if you're linking out to other pages of your site or whatever. All right. You can take your site. There are whole companies that basically create focus groups that they will go through your site, try to break it, try to find out what's good and what's bad about it. All right. And I mean, there's companies that make their living doing that kind of thing. All right. They talk a little bit more in here about the robot stuff. You can include a sitemap, and typically you include a sitemap with the site, even for a small site. And a lot of times that might even be on the bottom of the page, so people know how they can work their way through your site. All right. And again, this is how you can do some of the spidering stuff. And that's it. So what we will do tomorrow is we are going to go over this. All right. I'll give you a quick intro to JavaScript. We will look at their email application. I will give you a quick intro to jQuery. We will look at their email application for jQuery. And then when we get done, we will build a site using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right. And you won't have to turn it in or anything like that. Some kind of an idea how to use it, what it's all about. All right. So again, I did go in during the break and I tried to look to see why my site, my shape up wasn't working. I couldn't figure it out, but I'll keep looking at it. And if I find out what the problem is, I'll let you know. Now, last thing, you already know this, or you should. So again, for this weekend, now tomorrow the chapter 10 stuff is due in here. All right. But chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, all of that stuff is due on Sunday. Okay. Just do the best you can with this. All right. Create stress tips page and add icons. All right. Create a page with a table. Create a page with a form. Add audio and video to a page. And add an embedded font and printing for textual information. And pretty much the other one, the Halloween Superstore, is the same stuff. All right. What we will do together as a class again, then we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. But we will look and we're going to do something like this. But ours will look a lot nicer. We'll just create a whole app that'll basically ask somebody for their height, for their weight, and then it'll give you the BMI. Okay, we might even add some more stuff to it. I'll see. All right, so unless either of you have any questions, that's what I had for today, and then I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I'm good. Have a good day, sir.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.